I only have one message to give you. I don't care what you think of me. I don't care what you call me. I do care what you do with this information because it is important to our survival as a species.
My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger. On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war. These are opening stages of what will be a broad and concerted campaign. More than 35 countries are giving crucial support, from the use of naval and air bases to help with intelligence and logistics to the deployment of combat units. Every nation in this coalition has chosen to bear the duty and share the honor of serving in our common defense. To all the men and women of the United States Armed Forces now in the Middle East, the peace of a troubled world and the hopes of an oppressed people now depend on you. That trust is well placed. The enemies you confront will come to know your skill and bravery. The people you liberate will witness the honorable and decent spirit of the American military. In this conflict, America faces an enemy who has no regard for conventions of war or rules of morality. Saddam Hussein has placed Iraqi troops and equipment in civilian areas, attempting to use innocent men, women, and children as shields for his own military, a final atrocity against his people. I want Americans and all the world to know that coalition forces will make every effort to spare innocent civilians from harm. A campaign on the harsh terrain of a nation as large as California could be longer and more difficult than some predict. And helping Iraqis achieve a united, stable, and free country will require our sustained commitment. We come to Iraq with respect for its citizens, for their great civilization, and for the religious faiths they practice. We have no ambition in Iraq except to remove a threat and restore control of that country to its own people. I know that the families of our military are praying that all those who serve will return safely and soon. Millions of Americans are praying with you for the safety of your loved ones and for the protection of the innocent. For your sacrifice, you have the gratitude and respect of the American people. And you can know that our forces will be coming home as soon as their work is done. Our nation enters this conflict reluctantly, yet our purpose is sure. The people of the United States and our friends and allies will not live at the mercy of an outlaw regime that threatens the peace with weapons of mass murder. We will meet that threat now with our Army, Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard, and Marines, so that we do not have to meet it later with armies of firefighters and police and doctors on the streets of our cities. Now that conflict has come, the only way to limit its duration is to apply decisive force. And I assure you, this will not be a campaign of half measures, and we will accept no outcome but victory. My fellow citizens, the dangers to our country and the world will be overcome. We will pass through this time of peril and carry on the work of peace. We will defend our freedom. We will bring freedom to others, and we will prevail. May God bless our country and all who defend her. All of this was brought upon us in a single day, and night fell on a different world, a world where freedom itself is under attack. Americans have many questions tonight. Americans are asking, who attacked our country? The evidence we have gathered all points to a collection of loosely affiliated terrorist organizations known as Al-Qaeda. They are some of the murderers indicted for bombing American embassies in Tanzania and Kenya and responsible for bombing the USS Cole. This group and its leader, a person named Osama bin Laden, are linked to many other organizations in different countries, including the Egyptian Islamic Jihad and the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan. There are thousands of these terrorists in more than 60 countries. They are recruited from their own nations and neighborhoods and brought to camps in places like Afghanistan, where they are trained in the tactics of terror. They are sent back to their homes or sent to hide in countries around the world to plot evil and destruction. The leadership of Al-Qaeda has great influence in Afghanistan and supports the Taliban regime in controlling most of that country. In Afghanistan, we see Al-Qaeda's vision for the world. It is not only repressing its own people, it is threatening people everywhere by sponsoring and sheltering and supplying terrorists. By aiding and abetting murder, the Taliban regime is committing murder. And tonight, the United States of America makes the following demands on the Taliban. Deliver to United States authorities all the leaders of Al-Qaeda who hide in your land.
Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake, all right? Now, you can take it any way you want, and it took Jeb Bush, if you remember at the beginning of his announcement, when he announced for president, took him 5 days. He went back. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. Took him 5 days before his people told him what to say, and he ultimately said it was a mistake. The war in Iraq, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives. We don't even have it. Iran is taking over Iraq with the second largest oil reserves in the world. Obviously, it was a mistake. So George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
But so you still think he should be impeached?
I think it's my turn, isn't it?
You do whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. I want to tell you, they lied.
Okay.
They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass destruction.
All right. Governor Bush.
I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying he went in there, he thought there were weapons of mass destruction, maybe, or maybe he didn't, okay? But he thought there were weapons, and there weren't. So I'm telling the truth.
But you said he lied. That's a little more
Well,
than just he thought.
If he knew that there weren't weapons of mass destruction, and if he used that as an excuse to go in and try and make up for some sins for previous years, then it would be a lie. But I don't think, maybe that's true, and maybe it isn't true.
But I want to say that I know that this is a challenging time for all Americans. We're enduring a great national trial, and we will prove that we can meet the moment. I want to assure the American people that we're doing everything we can each day to confront and ultimately defeat this horrible, invisible enemy. We're at war. In a true sense, we're at war, and we're fighting an invisible enemy. Think of that. The worst attack we've ever had on our country. This is really the worst attack we've ever had. This is worse than Pearl Harbor. This is worse than the World Trade Center. There's never been an attack like this. And it should have never happened. Could have been stopped at the source. Could have been stopped in China. It should have been stopped right at the source. As you know, China tried to say at one point, maybe they stopped now, that it was caused by American soldiers. That can't happen. It's not going to happen. Not as long as I'm president. It comes from China. John, please.
You've been very clear about who you think is to blame or where the origin to blame for this virus is.
Not think. No. I don't think. I know where it came from. I don't know if you'd say China's to blame. Certainly we didn't get an early run on it. It would have been helpful if we knew about it earlier. But it comes from China, and it's not a question about that. Nobody's questioning that.
Airport security has changed immensely since that day. NBC 26's Raquel Amel spoke with air travelers today who remember what it was like before and after the attacks. She's live at 6 with more.
Stacey, airport staff tell me they don't think restrictions will ever be as relaxed as they were before the attacks 14 years ago. But they do say the nation is slowly beginning to heal from that tragedy.
This is where the greatest number of Americans have been affected in the post-9/11 world.
COVID-19 has already changed most of our lives in ways we could not imagine just 6 months ago. Billions of people have been told to isolate. Millions of people have lost their jobs. Hundreds of thousands of people have lost their lives. The world is now slowly and painfully coming to terms with the worst pandemic it has faced in 100 years. The good news is that the spread of the virus is slowing down in many countries. As governments start to ease lockdowns, many are looking to the future and asking, what will a post-coronavirus world look like?
I would say one of the hardest hit industries other than probably airlines and hotels. But it's going to be a new world, right?
And for the folks who made a living selling to the lunch crowd, Twitter's announcement means the pain of the pandemic could be permanent.
Our sales are about 40% lower. Being able to service more of our community is going to be more of our focal point instead of just looking towards upstairs within our building.
Are there any upsides? Well, a post-pandemic office might give each person a lot more room. Working from home now is a chance to stay safe while we wait for a vaccine. But city life may never be the same again.
It includes stay-at-home measures when they're put in place, but hopefully when countries need to implement stay-at-home measures or other types of measures, they're done for a short amount of time, as short as possible, and in the smallest geographic area as possible, so that we can keep economies going. What we're going to have to figure out, and I think what we're all going to have to figure out together, is what our new normal looks like. Our new normal includes physical distancing from others. Our new normal includes wearing masks where appropriate. Our new normal includes us knowing where this virus is each and every day, where we live, where we work, where we want to travel. And that's going to be part of how we move forward with this, finding the balance between keeping the virus transmission low and resuming normal activities. But again, we're defining this together, and Hong Kong will bring this outbreak under control, as they have done in the past.
Peak hour in Australia's second largest city. Public transport, normally filled with workers, is now near empty. Tough measures, including an overnight curfew, are in place to slow the spread of COVID-19 as the number of new daily cases remains in the triple digits, and the government is doing everything in its power to make sure people stay in their homes unless it's absolutely necessary. Tough fines have been introduced for anyone breaching isolation.
Apart from emergency medical care, there is literally no reason for you to leave your home. And if you were to leave your home and not be found there, you will have a very difficult time convincing Victoria Police that you had a lawful reason.
New numbers out today show nearly 1.5 million Americans filed for unemployment last week. So what does that number mean? Well, it is higher than we were expecting. It means people are still losing their jobs because of this pandemic. Weekly jobless claims had never hit that million mark before the end of March, and now they just can't seem to fall below it.
The man charged with saving as many jobs as possible today predicted very tough times ahead.
There will be more hardship to come. This lockdown is having a very significant impact on our economy. We are likely to face a severe recession, the likes of which we haven't seen, and of course that will have an impact on employment.
First up on the show, well, one of the most immediate economic fallouts of the coronavirus pandemic in Europe has been rising levels of poverty. Not since the Second World War have economists raised an alarm. warning European leaders over poverty levels rising. Queues for food handouts in some of the richest countries in Europe is evidence enough. Take a look at the scenes we're about to show you. These people in queues are Europe's neo-poor, meaning these people are those who have been pushed into poverty all of a sudden due to COVID-19.
Australia has passed another dismal landmark, with unemployment topping 1 million for the first time in 22 years. And there is more bad news ahead. July's jobless numbers were gathered before Victoria's return to lockdown.
Good morning. Since at least the Industrial Revolution, Americans have worried about technology taking their jobs. Past inventions, though, have ended up creating new jobs, not only destroying the old ones. Economists worry that this time may be different.
$2.50. In Maplewood, New Jersey,
$4.35.
Tim Gianni works the register of his family-owned convenience store.
$1.50.
Just as he has since high school.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Here, we know all our customers by name. I have papers or candy, or I know what they get, and I'll put it right there so that it's ready for them, and it makes them feel good.
How do you know?
You can see when they come in, they have that smile on their face. Stella, look, one more.
One day, Gianni hopes to pass the job to a new generation, keeping it in the family.
4 for 4.
Or, at the very least,
I'm Lowe's robot helper.
keeping it human. Other retailers have a very different dream.
You can talk to it, it talks back to you.
Can I help you find something?
This autonomous, multilingual robot is designed to help customers at the home improvement chain Lowe's get their shopping done as quickly as possible.
It's basically doing indoor mapping, and it's figuring out where it is, where you are.
Kyle Nell is executive director of Lowe's Innovation Labs.
It will actually help you find the thing you're looking for.
Follow me.
The machine is one of 22 that the company is proudly testing in Northern California.
You're like, oh my gosh, there's an autonomous robot inside of a Lowe's. Awesome.
But what may look awesome for Lowe's and many of the nation's other businesses could spell anxiety for American workers.
Hi, everybody. It's Jessica Stone at Stansberry Research, along with Mike Barrett, an analyst for Extreme Value. And he's got some really interesting thoughts about automation and how this coronavirus pandemic, is really going to accelerate automation in the economies around the world. Mike, why now? What is it about the distance that we have to have from each other that's going to accomplish what you're talking about?
Well, I think you got a couple of things going on in the restaurant business, for instance. You've got restaurant owners who now have millions of employees who may not want to come back to work for them and put themselves in that situation again. On the other hand, you've got a customer base that's now very cognizant of and attuned to this potential for getting infected because somebody touched something that has now given you the virus. So this is what's going to speed up what's already been a trend towards automation. We're going to see robots preparing food and so forth.
And what are some other sectors? You talked about food preparation, but what are some other sectors that'll be impacted by this acceleration in automation?
One particular segment that has been dramatically impacted here in just the last few weeks is the call center business. A lot of companies have hired call center companies in the Philippines, and when the Philippines shut down because of the virus, the call center shut down, and so that meant that tens of thousands of calls couldn't come through to companies as they normally would, and so they had to scramble for a plan B. I think the long-term solution will be more use of artificial intelligence, again, automation, a transfer towards chatbots and robots doing what once was just the place of humans.
The spread of COVID-19.
Gatherings at this park are not allowed. Please practice safe distancing at all times and do not loiter at this park. Stay safe. Stay home. To curb the spread of COVID-19, gatherings at this park are not allowed.
Let's keep Singapore healthy. For your own safety and for those around you, please stand at least 1 meter apart. Thank you. Let's keep Singapore healthy. For your own safety and for those around you, please stand at least 1 meter apart. Thank you. Let's keep Singapore healthy. For your own safety and for those around you, please stand at least 1 meter apart. Thank you.
Some local police officers are switching to new technology to break up crowds, keep visitors out of parks, and make sure people are social distancing. They are using drones. News 6's Lauren Korn shows us how they are getting results.
COVID-19, this park is currently closed.
What we're doing here at this department is trying to leverage the technology that's out there and make it fit into this mold that is COVID-19.
Daytona Beach police are now using 2 loaner drones equipped with loudspeakers.
We apologize for the inconvenience.
Thanks to DJI, a drone company with a disaster relief program. And these useful tools that Sergeant Tim Ehrenkoffer says helps disperse crowds and keep people out of city parks that are now closed.
Reducing the officer having to go out there, walk into the park property, walk into a crowd of people, share those drones back and forth just to deliver a message that the park's closed, don't be in here.
The department showing drone footage from one of its 30 missions over the last week. The video doesn't include sound, but it does show people complying at Derbyshire Park.
To the current health emergency, members of the public are reminded to keep a safe distance of 6 feet from others.
We are in the middle of a crisis. We're on our peak time frame, and we're serious about social distancing.
The mayor and city officials say they're prepared to enforce social distancing measures any public place that deems it necessary, saying they want to prevent places like Forsyth Park and other public areas from becoming crowded.
The reason why we have some of the cases we have was because people 2 weeks ago felt that life was normal. It's not normal.
The Savannah Police Department is using 5 drones to monitor the city.
We do not use our drones for random patrol. They're not flying all the time. We use them in directed areas where the need is present.
Using 2 of those drones to disseminate social distancing measures through pre-recorded messages.
Please help us keep you safe. Thank you for your cooperation.
They give us the capability to put it airborne 100 feet in the air and cover a much larger area than an officer on foot could, and get the same message out rather quickly and safely.
We not only have video, but we also have the feet on the ground to make them break it up. This is just a warning.
This is the next generation of surveillance. For the first time, we actually have permission from the government to show the basic capabilities. It is important for the public to know that some of these capabilities exist.
Engineer Yanis Antoniadis designed the new sensor, known as Argus. With 1.8 billion pixels, it's the world's highest resolution camera. Argus fits inside this pod that attaches to the belly of a UAV. But because much of the work is classified, we can't see the sensor itself.
Because we are not allowed to expose some of the pieces that make up the sensors, so you get to look at pretty plastic curtains.
Also known as Wide Area Persistent Stare, Argus is the equivalent of having up to 100 predators look at an area the size of a medium-sized city at once. This image was taken 17,500 feet above Quantico, Virginia, and covers 15 square miles.
This whole image is at a very, very fine resolution. So if we wanted to know what is going on in any spot along this image, say near this building at this intersection, we can generate a moving image that shows what's going on in the area.
Simply by touching the screen, Antoniadis has opened up a window showing a detailed area, while still maintaining the broader context.
And everything that is a moving object is being automatically tracked. The color boxes represent that the computer has recognized the moving objects. You can see individuals crossing the street. You can see individuals walking in parking lots. There's actually enough resolution to be able to see the people waving their arms or walking around, what kind of clothes they wear.
We turn now to that secret document, 16 pages long and stirring up so much controversy tonight. It is a kind of handbook for lethal power against terrorists, even if they are American citizens. ABC's chief White House correspondent Jonathan Karl tells us about the news today.
By one count, President Obama has already used unmanned CIA drones to strike more than 300 suspected terrorist targets, even more than his predecessor. But today we learned just how much authority the administration believes it has to kill without trial or evidence suspected terrorists, even American citizens.
14 years ago today, on this morning, Americans were shocked by a tragedy in Oklahoma City. The first time, there was no Department of Homeland Security, the first time many Americans used the term or heard the term Homeland Security. And people in that city will gather today, and I believe we have a live picture of it, for a commemoration marking the 14th anniversary. As we reflect on that day 14 years ago, it is your job now to keep that from happening again. Are we at a greater risk of domestic terrorism events like that today, or lesser?
I think we're at a greater state of readiness. The threat of terrorism, whether from a foreign source or domestic source, is now just, it's with us. We have to acknowledge that. We have to minimize the risk of it, and we have to be ready to deal with it. And I think with the Department of Homeland Security, all the changes that have occurred since Oklahoma City, since 9/11, there has been improvement.
As you know, a recent report from your department raised a lot of eyebrows and caused a bit of controversy, because in that report you said this, that the Department of Homeland Security assesses that right-wing extremists will attempt to recruit and radicalize returning veterans in order to exploit their skills and knowledge derived from military training and combat. The willingness of a small percentage of military personnel to join the extremist groups during the 1990s because they were disgruntled, disillusioned, or suffering from the psychological effects of war is being replicated today. Is being replicated today. You have active intelligence that tells you people coming back from Iraq, coming back from Afghanistan, who might be mad at the military, who might simply have post-traumatic stress disorder, are being actively recruited by extremist groups?
Certainly, and our department is not the only department that has made that comment. The FBI has made the same comment. Other groups have made the same comment. Here's the important point. The report is not saying that veterans are extremists, far from it. What it is saying is returning veterans are targets of right-wing extremist groups that are trying to recruit those to commit violent acts within the country. We want to do all we can to prevent that.
We begin with some new and chilling details about a terror plot.
A group of young Muslim immigrants
hatched the terrorist plot at a local mosque.
Ringleaders of a homegrown terror cell were arrested as they tried to buy AK-47 and M16 assault weapons.
Since the September 11th attacks, there have been over 500 people prosecuted for terrorism-related offenses. And this is a number that sounds really big, and it makes it sound like Americans are being kept safe from terrorism attacks. But we found that in a lot of these cases, people were prosecuted who never would have committed a terrorist act in the first place if it weren't for the involvement of the FBI.
While Dowd is charged with attempting to use a weapon of mass destruction, it was a plot largely engineered by the FBI, during which the teenager is accused of taking the bait.
The theory behind some of these cases is that these people are terrorists in waiting. If the FBI hadn't shown up and taken them down the path of committing this terrorist act, Al-Qaeda would instead. But we don't have evidence of that actually happening.
What this means is that American Muslim communities are being treated as suspect, that law enforcement approach them not just as partners in countering terrorism or providing information about potential terrorist attacks, but as places where terrorism could be bred.
Firdas was arrested Wednesday after undercover federal agents posing as al-Qaeda members delivered materials he allegedly requested.
One interesting case is the case of a man named Rezwan Ferdos. His mental health was deteriorating significantly during the time that the FBI was investigating him. It deteriorated to the point that his father had to quit work to look after him. That didn't stop the FBI from pursuing a case by sending an informant in to work with Ferdos and eventually help him develop a plot to attack the U.S. Capitol building.
The majority of people still believe that Timothy McVeigh was a right-wing extremist who bombed the Oklahoma City building with a Ryder truck because he was upset with the government. People close to the event told a very different story.
A local congressman believes that convicted bomber Timothy McVeigh and his accused co-conspirator Terry Nichols are not the only ones involved.
The Oklahoma State Representative Charles Key produced a videotape featuring witnesses who claim to have seen Timothy McVeigh with another man the morning of the bombing.
He was wearing a ball cap. Timothy McVeigh had his on backwards, which just like this. It was on his head. The other gentleman had his on like this.
In fact, the FBI had actively pursued John Doe No. 2 in its initial investigation, then denied his existence altogether. There were also multiple reports that explosives were found inside the Murrah building.
The Justice Department is reporting that a second explosive device has been found in the AP Murrah building in downtown Oklahoma City. Mike, you're still with us, aren't you?
Yes, I am, and I might tell you in addition to that, in fact, what we were told at the scene a few minutes ago was that, in fact, 2 different explosive devices were found in addition to the one that went off.
The second explosive was found and defused. The third explosive that was found, and they are working on right now as we speak, I understand, both the second and third explosives, if you can imagine this, were larger than the first.
Bomb squads were actually caught on video pulling into the building to retrieve these devices.
They'll back that trailer down there, and the bomb squad folks will go in, and they will use that trailer. You see the bucket on the back there, sort of, this is how they would transport the explosive device away from this populated area to try to do something with it.
I just took a look down the street at the Murrah building again. I see another bomb truck going, so apparently they're going to try to get out that third bomb that's been talked about.
This was even confirmed by the governor at the time, Frank Keating.
One device was deactivated. Apparently there's another device, and obviously whatever did the damage to the Murrah building was a tremendous, very sophisticated explosive device.
Timothy McVeigh was trained to kill in the United States Army. He served in the Persian Gulf War, where he was awarded several medals for heroism.
In the Gulf, you saw combat?
I did.
You fired a weapon at the Iraqis?
Yes.
And killed soldiers?
Yes. In some ways, I could see the right and wrong of it. The right, I thought, well, it was self-defense. The reason I fired is because I saw muzzle flash, and I instinctively fired around in that direction. But then I thought, well, at the same time, I'm in this person's country. What right did I have to come over to his country and kill him? How did he ever transgress against me? I went over there hyped up, just like everyone else. Not only is Saddam evil, all Iraqis are evil. What I experienced, though, was an entirely different ballgame. And being face-to-face, close with these people, in personal contact, you realize they're just people like you.